How would you like to collect 100% of your rent from all of your tenants? Debbie, how long have you been leading our property management company?
Full-time since about 2013.
So 7 years.
You're right.
This is going to be awesome because you got such great knowledge. So how many rentals are you managing right now?
123 right now.
123. And what's your mix of Section 8 versus market rent?
We have 3 Section 8 and all the rest are market rent.
All right, so the majority of your experience, fair to say, is in market rent, although you definitely got some Section 8 experience.
Correct.
All right, so how much, so the day we are recording this is April 23rd. So the virus, I don't know, and the social distancing and I don't know, the layoffs, all that stuff's been going on for about a month, give or take, maybe a little bit more. I think there were a lot of people that were concerned about how much rent they were going to be able to collect on their properties in April. And just so everybody knows that we just own residential properties, all single family residential properties.
Yeah.
So how much of your April rent have you collected today?
Of the potential rent, 99.5%.
99.5. So you got one little straggler out there, I guess you would say.
Yes, we have one tenant who is not paying rent and not moving, basically. And of course,
it's a long story. Long story. The house, I don't know. We don't need to get into the long story, but we got one little straggler out there. We'll just say it that way. What did you do differently in late March or early April that you believe helped you be successful in collecting rent in April?
Well, to prepare for April's rent, we sent a letter to all of our tenants with their April invoices, letting them know that April rent was still expected, but if they couldn't pay their rent due to the virus, to let us know right away before their grace period was over, and we could have them submit a request for accommodation and a payment plan. So we had about 15 of our tenants do that. We also called all of our tenants before the end of the grace period just to check in, see how they were doing, and we got a lot of good feedback that they really appreciated that.
Good. So you had 15 people that requested accommodation of some sort. So how have those kind of played out?
Well, several of them, when they got their stimulus check, then they were able to catch up, or when their unemployment kicked in, they were able to pay the rent. So they each had specific plans and have been following them. Awesome.
Well, that's good. So are you staying in contact with them now after they've paid their rent and stuff? Or what's your plan going forward to keep in communication with them?
Well, I just mailed out May invoices, so we sent another letter similar to what we sent for April, just a little bit different. And our plan is to call them again before the May rent.
Do you feel like, obviously, if their stimulus check helped them pay their April rent, they're not going to get one of those in May. So are you concerned about how May's going to go?
A little bit, you just don't know, but I believe the unemployment issues have been fixed, and hopefully in early May, some people will be able to go back to work. So cautiously optimistic, I should say.
Cautiously optimistic based due to some of them being able to go back to work because it probably wasn't I don't know, their employer is able to open their business back up, or potentially even if they're not, they're still be able to collect their unemployment.
Right, that's the hope. And we spend a lot of time really screening our tenants, so we do have really good tenants.
We do have a lot of really good tenants. So let's talk just a little bit about that. That's what is your tenant screening criteria? How do you screen your tenants?
Well, we have a lot of different ways that we screen our tenants based on their background. We run a credit report background check on all of our tenants. We get rental verifications not only from their current landlord, but as many past landlords as we can find. And we don't just use what they've given us as landlord history. We also, through their background check, will find previous landlords. We require 3 times net rent for income. A lot of people look at gross rent, but to us what's important is the take home. And so I think that helps as well. So we make sure that they have sufficient income to cover rent and utilities typically. We don't allow anybody with significant criminal felony backgrounds. I think those are probably the biggies.
How about evictions? If somebody had an eviction a
Oh,
year
well,
or 5
evictions
years?
are an automatic no.
How long? How far back? What if somebody had an eviction 10 years ago?
It all depends. If they didn't tell us about it, we ask a very specific question that said, have you ever had a landlord action, left owing money, or been evicted from a tenancy? If they answer no and we find an eviction anywhere, that to us is a huge red flag. We make it very clear on our application process. If they falsify the records, that's a disqualifier. So it would depend on the circumstances, but if they're honest with us up front, 10 years ago and a clean rental history since then is fine. If they also have had multiple evictions over 10 years, that would be a problem. Anything within the last 2 years would be an automatic denial.
I've heard that all tenants lie, so how do you get one that doesn't? I mean, all people lie for that matter, but not just tenants. But
well, basically, we double check everything that's on the application through the credit report, the background check, looking on Facebook if they have a profile, Google, whatever we can find. We verify that what they told us is accurate, and if we can't verify it, then we assume it's not accurate.
all right, so let me dig into a couple of those. So you say you run credit. What are you looking for on their credit report? Are you looking for a score, or are you looking at details, or what are you looking for?
We definitely look at the score, but we don't just judge it on the score. So basically below 530 is usually an automatic denial. Occasionally we will consider a cosigner and double security deposit. We also look at how many negative trade lines do they have, what exactly is on the credit report. If they have a low credit score but there's only one trade line, that's a lot different than if there's 18 negative trade lines on there. If there's any landlord utility collections, those are usually automatic denials. Large amount debt to income, we're looking at that. So we look at the credit report pretty closely. We also look at it for previous addresses. Do those match what they've given us?
All right, that's good. That's helpful. Landlord verification. Can you talk a little bit more about that? How are you doing that? How do you know if it's a good landlord verification? So
Yeah,
forth?
we actually spend a lot of time verifying that the landlord they gave us is actually the landlord. So we'll look at the tax records to see who actually owns the property. We'd ever go by the phone number and email they gave us. We try to find that phone number and email on our own. Either, there's a variety of ways you can try to track those phone numbers down. We also, through their background check, will look to see if the person they put as their landlord is related to them, because we don't accept landlord verifications from family and friends.
What if, I do feel like you've approved some people that were living with their parents or living with, so how do you get a verification there, or how do you decide if you're going to take somebody that's in that situation?
If they have no rental history, we require a double security deposit or cosigner.
Okay. So you'll just take a double security deposit, or do they have to have other things?
Well, they
good?
have to meet all the other criteria. They have to have the income 3 times net. They have to, not have any significant criminal background. They have to, meet all the other criteria. But if it's just they don't have any rental history.
So you consider if somebody's living with a family member that they don't have rental history?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Interesting. So how many of the, just ballpark, of all the applications you get for a house, what percentage are you accepting? Like 1 out of 2, 1 out of 5, most all of them? How many do you typically go through before you get one, just on average?
Yeah, I don't really know what the average would be, because if we take the first person who's qualified,
yeah,
sometimes it's the first person, sometimes it's the 20th person.
It is sometimes the 20th person.
It depends on the property. Some properties seem to attract less qualified people than others. Certain times a year, like around the holidays, tend to have a lot of people who are being evicted, or early spring, you have a lot of people who are being evicted. So there might be a lot of people looking, but who don't meet our criteria.
Interesting. You touched on fair housing there for just a sec. Do you, obviously you have criteria and you follow all the right guidelines. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you've ever been called by a tester?
You never know, but sometimes you wonder. Like, I had approved a tenant, and recently she had a very odd situation where she was raising her sisters and had some question whether she qualified on the income level, but she ended up meeting all of our criteria, and when I called to tell her, she just backed out with no apparent reason. So you always wonder, was that a test or not, but I don't know how you'd ever know.
Yeah.
I have heard that there are people who are testers to make sure you're following fair housing. I don't know how that works or if that's true, but that they could call you out of the blue and pretend that they're a tenant wanting to apply for one of your houses just to make sure you're following fair housing guidelines. And it is extremely important you always follow fair housing guidelines.
Awesome. One of the other criteria that you mentioned was 3 times rent, and you're talking net income. So so what kinds of income do you look at, and how do you determine net income? And do you ever look into consideration if somebody's got income that's not really verifiable easily? So can you talk a little bit about those things?
Yeah, we only look at verifiable income. So they have to have W-2 pay stubs or SSI letters, or if they're self-employed, they have to have their last 2 years' tax returns, bank statements. So that's pretty much verifiable. We don't accept child support as verifiable income. It's too irregular.
You've mentioned a couple times a background check. Can anybody do a background check, or how do you have the ability to do background checks?
Well, we use property management software called AppFolio, and so we run the background check through them. We also have another company where we're able to do some background checks through as well. You would just have to look into finding a verifiable company to run those background checks. You can also look on CaseNet, which is a great resource we have here in Missouri.
So what is CaseNet?
CaseNet is through the court system in Missouri, where you can search by name, date, type of court. Usually we'll just do all the participating courts by their name to see if they have any history of landlord actions or criminal history. So Missouri is nice that we have that. If they're from out of state, it's a lot more difficult.
And that's just a free service that's available on the internet?
Yeah, it's a free public record.
Excellent.
And Google actually has a tremendous amount on people if you just Google their name.
Yeah?
It's a little bit scary.
What else do you do? Facebook people or Instagram
Facebook.
people?
I'm not on any other social media, but I'm sure if you're on other social media, that'd probably be a good idea.
So you do Google and Facebook everybody that applies?
Yeah.
Interesting. So I feel like you guys got pretty strict criteria, and I don't know, I'm just guessing, but I suspect that you might turn down more applicants than the average person. I don't know if that's true or not, but do you feel like your strict criteria has helped you in your rent collection during this in April?
Well, it's helped a lot, because a big part of the criteria that we haven't talked about yet that I look for is, are they being responsible? So are they doing what they need to do to be able to pay their rent, their utilities, their car payment, all of those things. And so therefore rent is a priority for them.
And you do that just through your criteria, or is there
Right.
anything else you do, or is it just through your criteria?
It's just through the criteria. Do they say what they're gonna, do they do what they say they're gonna do during the screening process? And then something we aren't able to do right now that we would typically do is the last step is a home visit to where they're currently living. And that tells a lot about how they're taking care of the house. If they have animals, we get a chance to meet the animals. So we can see, are they gonna actually take care of the house? And in general, people who take care of the house are also gonna be good, responsible tenants.
Awesome. You touched on that home visit and your pets, meeting the pets just a little bit there. Can you talk about your pet screening that you do?
Yeah, the pet screening is something we've been doing now for a year, and we use a company actually called petscreening.com. And that's helped a lot with managing tenants with pets. Through pet screening, they have the ability, if you need an assistance animal, to actually be able to verify that they qualify for an assistance animal. And they do all that for you. There's no charge to either us or the potential tenant for that service. If they have a dog or a cat, there is a charge for them to process the pet screening, and the tenants have to provide verification that they've had their vaccines, that they have renter's insurance, again, that they're responsible pet owners. And we also do charge a monthly pet rent on top of a security deposit for the pets. Pet screening also has a method for people with no pets, providing an affidavit that they don't have any pets and they understand that they can't have any pets.
How much is your pet application or your pet rent?
It's $20 for the first pet, $15 for the second, and we have a maximum of 2 pets is all we'll allow. And there are certain...
on a monthly basis, so $20?
No, that's the pet screening.
Okay.
And then the pet rent is the same. It's $20 a month for the first pet, $15 for the second pet with the pets.
Do you find that you get much resistance from tenants about the pet rent or the pet screening?
No, we haven't really had any. It's definitely weeded out some tenants because they don't take care of their pets. They don't get the rabies vaccines that are required, or they don't want to pay the pet rent, so they just don't apply. So we don't require the pet screening to be done until they've met all of our initial screening criteria.
Awesome. I think that was awesome information. Thanks for sharing that. And if you guys found this video helpful, please subscribe to our channel and share this with other people. In the comments below, just let us know, are you managing your own properties or are you hiring a property manager? And is that working for you?